almost day to day, literally getting involved in such a big way. It augurs very well for the future of Journal of Psychiatric Spectrum. This is one important point. Of course, when we are talking about ethics, this is one of the very fluid area wherein a lot of issues get into the picture, which both erudite speakers going to highlight. When we talk about medical ethics in general, the issues involved are something totally different. When we are trying to talk about publishing, the amount of stress a editor goes through looking into all the matter is something phenomenal, and I think Harbishettar should be ready for that particular aspect too. So the issue here is actually something about integrity and honesty of people in general. We assume that everybody is fine, but all practical purposes, knowingly, unknowingly, inadvertently, in fact, a lot of things happen. And why all this type of sensitization programs necessary and educating the scientific community is necessary is because one should know beforehand where something can go wrong. That is one important aspect. So what we are doing, one should be well aware of. What others are seeing, we are doing. In fact, the transparency and lot many issues. And as far as that particular point is concerned, as an editor of this new journal, Harbishettar, we are doing extraordinarily great work because each and everything transparent, it is there open for people to look into. We are in a different era altogether, but I can still remember when we started Indian Journal of Psychiatry as an editor, the journey, that particular time, hardly we used to have an occasional email. Apart from that, everything used to happen physically in that particular format. Zoom and every technology has helped us so much. In fact, this is one of the things. It has helped us in so many ways, and it has also made our our job so complicated too. In fact, this cut and paste, people are so comfortable, and it is almost impossible to know how, from where some of these type of things have gone into. So from that angle, I'm definitely sure the speakers would be highlighting us. So ethical norms of scientific conduct, maybe we are talking about scientific publication in general, the authenticity and accuracy of information. In fact, the statistics is actually something like it can be manipulated so much. So one can put it in very clear terms. Exactly. The same question, the originality and related issues, the authorship too, and many of the other related aspects, how we actually go about. We had a lot of discussion happening in this WhatsApp group, and I'm actually well aware of. One or two areas where you have repeatedly asked me questions related to the giving credit. See, this is one area where we get into a lot of difficulty. There are the editors who are very liberal too. In fact, there are a few people who are very rigid in how actually want to manage this whole aspect. And from this particular angle, the one area where we have found a lot of difficulty in Indian authors is actually the area of disclosure. We really don't know what to disclose, how much to disclose, and whether actually to disclose. In fact, this is one of the area we as editors ourselves find it so difficult to sometimes make points clear. So each of these area needs attention. I wish this program all the best, and at the outset, more than confident that it's a very real good learning experience. For a few minutes, I'll be getting out of the Zoom to get into the car. Then I will be back again. All the best. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that was Dr. T.S.S. Rao, who has immense experience of running a journal. In fact, he's the one who is pioneered, and because of him, that the Indian Journal of Psychiatry has reached the heights and almost the busiest, one of the busiest websites in the world now in psychiatry world. So with that introduction, I think I welcome Dr. Somsekhar Vijay, Secretary of IPS Karnataka chapter. And with that, sorry for the delay, sir. Over to you, Dr. Santosh Chaturvedi, sir.
Yeah. Thank you, Vijay. And can we ask this lady Shweta's, I think, mic is on.
Mr. Nawaz, you're there? Mr. Nawaz?
Yes, sir, I am here, sir. It's recording now.
Can you make me host and Dr. Anil Kakunje co-host and mute everyone, please?
Sir, if I make you host, you
Yeah,
have to record.
Okay. So
I can make you
can
host.
can you mute everyone? Can you mute everyone, please? Everyone else,
Yeah,
rather.
yes, I can.
Yeah, we need you. We need you too.
Yeah, I have muted everybody.
Yes, sir. Sir, you are also muted. Unfortunately, Dr. Chaturvedi sir also is muted. So
No, I've done. Yeah. Now can you hear me?
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, so welcome to this program, and I'm really very happy to be a part of this, and especially very happy that Karnataka IPS Karnataka chapter has started a journal. My first question is, what took them so long? Because Karnataka IPS has been one of the most vibrant branches in states, for many years, and we have probably the most academic, psychiatrists in the state, and stalwarts like Dr. TSS Rao, and having NIMHANS here, and so many medical colleges and so many good centers of psychiatry. It is really quite delayed, because I know some other states have already been having their journals for the last few years. So anyway, better late than never, and it's good that Vijay has taken the lead in this, and I hope the journal will be very, very successful. That is another thing. What do you mean by a success of a journal? A success of a journal is one which gets more papers, or which has papers which are read by more people, or a journal which makes more money. So there are many issues about ethics in publishing, and when we talk about it, many times we think about reviewers, and we think about authors. But it's also very important to think about the editor, as Dr. Satyanarayan Rao was telling. That is a very important thing, and he took over the IJP in 2004, but I started it in 20 years before him, in 1985, as an assistant editor to Dr. Vaswani. And for 4 years, we took it from Dr. B.B. Sethi. So, there is a politics to that, but I don't want to talk about the politics. But those were the days when the printing used to be done by, those small letters we would put in this thing, and then take a hard copy and print. And, it was really very, so we were the first time we started computerized methods, and we used to get offset printing and all that. But that's not the issue. Also, for the first time, we started having a structured assessment of papers by reviewers. And we used to attach that to the hard copy and post it to people and to reviewers, and then they would fill it up and give us the comments, and we will summarize. Everything was done by typewriters. So much so that even I had taken a typewriter so that I could do some amount of typing in that. So a lot of things were there. Now, the ethics of the editor, that is the most important. And I think when Vijay mentioned about my editorial, journeys, I have been associated with many journals, and in capacities where role of editor was there. So the first thing which I'm now going to say a few things to you, Vijay, and it is also to others. First is, don't become paranoid. Okay, don't become paranoid. Have a clean slate. As Dr. Rao was saying, most people are good, so don't see everyone with suspicion. So most reviewers are very good. They go out of the way to review something, and most authors, they are trying very hard to write a paper. Karnataka has so many medical colleges, it has so many postgraduates, and there is nowhere for them to write and to publish. The journals have made it so strict to publish, that where will people publish? So the first thing is that an editor should be pro-publishing. think how you can accept papers, don't reject papers. And look at that is the, the ethical part of it is that you should be unbiased. And the first unbiased is that, I mean, like now for the last 7 years, I have been doing the Journal of Psychosocial Rehabilitation and Mental Health. We started with 2 issues in a year, and now we are gone on to 4 issues. And I would say the success of this journal is, even when it had 2 issues, we used to have almost 25,000 downloads. So I'm very happy that so many people download it. And nowadays you can get metrics. So how many people view? It is in thousands. It's in almost thousands of people are viewing and the articles. So that is the success of a journal. We might not be getting too many articles because it's a very niche area on rehabilitation. And we also don't accept other papers which are in other areas. So first thing is that the editor should be unbiased and unbiased towards the authors. Many times what will happen, you will think, oh, this paper has come from so and so person, he is a professor, he is a big boss. He might be a big boss, but the paper quality depends on the paper. It doesn't depend on the individual. Okay, so many people are good writers, bad writers, poor writers, all that, that's that. But it should always be on the quality of the paper. Always look at the paper. Always look at only the submission. So that is the ethics. Do not get biased by who has sent it. And secondly, we were saying about expert reviewers. Now, Vijay, you don't need expert reviewers. You need reviewers who can review papers. I'll give you an example. Dr. Satyanarayan Rao is here. Okay. And he's an expert in sexology or sexual psychiatry and medicine. But he can review any paper. He can review on schizophrenia. He can review on bipolar. Isn't it, Dr. Rao? He can review on everything. He can review on personality disorders. He can review on everything. Same way, just because I am not an expert in sexual medicine and sexual psychiatry, that doesn't mean that I can't do it. I can also review people. So review is like, I would remind, because I see a lot of people who are there, have been, of course, everyone has been a postgraduate at some time or the other. Reviewing is like research forum, like journal club. Like in a journal club, people sit down, the resident at that stage, many years back, you sit down and review a paper. It is the same way. You review a paper which has come to you, and in the end, you give your opinion on every aspect, on the introduction, on the methodology, on the this thing, and on the referencing and the tables and everything, and then you see whether the conclusions are correct. So anybody can review. That is a very important thing. Actually, you should not have expert people doing reviewing because their standards are very different. So if I write some simple paper on some topic about sex, Dr. Rao would say, what is this? This is nothing. It is not worth publishing. So we have to be very, very careful that we should do things, review only the quality of the paper. You don't need expert reviewers. So you need people. So what I would suggest is, since the journal is starting, and we wanted to do this for rehab also, you have a program like this where you invite people and take people who are mid-level, who have, or youngsters. See, I can see on the editorial board, you have, very illustrious people. Most of those illustrious people will not review papers. They won't have the time, and many times you have to keep it. We have also done it. We also, the Journal of Psychosocial Rehabilitation, at least 1/3 of the people are just because of their names, but because otherwise, for just being very diplomatic. But we know that when we send papers to them, they do not review it. So you keep people and you train. You are there, Anil is there, Somashekar is there, all of you youngsters are there. You train people on how to review and do a program on that and let people review that. So reviewing is very important. So what? I'm always impressed by Dr. Channa Vaswani. He was the first person with whom I worked. He never interfered with my work. And even if papers came from big shots those days, whether it was Venkova Rao or Sethi or Verma or anybody, he never said that publish this paper. Each and every paper went for peer review. and it was blinded peer review. It was not like computerized. We had to take scissors and cut off that first page, or we had to paste something and send it, and then get the report. So it was double blind. The peer person did not, the reviewer did not know, and the authors did not know who reviewed. Sometimes we even rejected. Even in the Journal of Psychosocial Rehabilitation, I don't know whether Siva has come or not. Siva is the associate editor. He handles the day-to-day things. Even my paper has got rejected. So that is because the reviewer did not know that it is my paper. And I really appreciate that. I know who the reviewers are because later on I went and checked who are the reviewers. But it is all right, so it's one of those things. They didn't think my paper was suitable, but it was not. So the rules apply to everyone. Okay, so it's very important to have ethical standards at the editorial level. Editors, associate editors, and everyone who should be there. Sometimes the reviewers can be very, we will talk about the reviewers a bit later. Another thing I want to talk right in the beginning is about conflict of interest and disclosure. The conflict of interest mainly is financial. So the moment there is a financial conflict of interest, it doesn't mean that you don't publish it. You just disclose it. So if I say that, I am working in so-and-so place and I am getting salary from it, that is my disclosure. If I have any other financial disclosure, I should mention it. For example, this program is sponsored by a pharmaceutical. So that disclosure should be done, which you have done. But the thing is that as editorial team, we should take a decision. We should be free from industry. We should be free from especially pharmaceutical industry. If you do that, if you have a support of a pharmaceutical industry, the value of the journal goes down. People see that is the conflict of interest. Now, I will always think that, even if you see in your brochure, which I put, the medication's name is bigger than the program's name, so they have their interest, but the main point about ethics in publishing is be free from any pressure. So financial is the biggest pressure. So my thing is, I was wondering, why do you need a pharmaceutical for this? Zoom is, for 45 minutes, it is free. Karnataka IPS is a multi-lakh, multi-crore organization. What would this program be costing? Less than 1,000 rupees, 2,000 rupees, even not even that. It is not. You're not paying TADA to anyone. There is no tea, coffee, lunch, or anything. So there is actually no cost. And I hope Karnataka IPS, has a Zoom for 1 year or 2 years or 5 years and gives it to people so that you can use it. But the thing is that, okay, suppose you say, what about funding a journal? For journal, you need funding, so, and I know the journal, your publisher is not a cheap publisher, so I will tell you my experience with Springers. We never paid them a penny. We never paid them. And initially they said that we have to pay, but we had a very good, publishing coordinator from there, and she said that we will manage it somehow. And the first 2-3 years we had to pay, but we did not pay. And they said we will recover it from the sales. And now, after that, they are paying us, and a very nominal amount to run the editorial office, but not otherwise. We are not getting paid. I do not get any money from Springers. Okay, so you have to be very, very cautious about keeping this. So how do we fund? If Karnataka IPS, first of all, has a lot of money, they should have paid it. Even if they don't want to pay, they say you raise funds. You have a fundraising, fundraising program or something, and people will give you. Or if you want, another ethical thing is equal opportunities. Equal opportunity is that when you, for example, in your journal, like in the Indian Journal of Psychiatry, you print advertisements. So you have a rate for half page, 1 page, 2 page advertisement, and anybody can do that. it will not be one company. It will not be Synapse or Micro or Sun or Torrent or any one company. It can be many. It's also for NGOs. It's also for GOs. It's for anyone who would like to do that. So if you want to do that, you should be able to do. If you want to raise funds, you raise funds from advertisements. You raise funds from having a funding program or something like that. But do not have from a single. See, there are many psychiatrists I know in even in Karnataka or in Indian Psychiatric Society who have idiosyncratic reaction to funding by pharmaceuticals. There are many who take help from them, but there are many who don't want to take help from them. So you have to be very, very cautious. You have to start on the right foot to be able to run the journal, because otherwise, if it gets typed that this journal is funded by pharma, then you will automatically, many people will stop publishing with you. What other things which other internationally they do? Okay, like many programs of WHO also, not WHO, WPA takes funds from pharma industry. So what usually they will do is there will be a very small sentence in a very small font. It will be written that this activity was funded by educational grant from so and so company, educational grant from Eli Lilly, educational grant from AstraZeneca or Pfizer or anything. So, but there is no advertisement of that company. There are no medications of that company. So you have to have, there is an ethical way of getting money. So you have to be very, very cautious about being an ethical journal. It's very important, and most of the ethics comes in in funding. Funding is directly not only about journal. As you would see, if people have the publications give rise to promotion, so there is fund and other things involved or not. So lots of things are there. One last comment I would make, then I think we should listen to Dr. Vina, and that is about using the term open access. Now, open access is now become a term which has a meaning. Okay, open access means basically you have to pay. So instead of that, you should use the term, it is free to publish and free to read. So like, we say in our journal, in the instructions to public, we say it is free to publish. You don't have to pay anything to publish. I have more than 500, 600 publications. I have never paid a single penny. I have never had a publication from my side in an open access journal. Only very recently, one of my colleagues has printed an article in an open access journal, but I never had. Earlier in the 1980s, I used to be paid. Journals used to give me some money, very nominal, $100 for a paper I would publish. Or if it's a chapter, then I would get a book, or I would get a free access to their journal or anything. So open access is a big industry. It's actually a very unethical industry, because somebody gives the money for the research, and so you do the work, then you pay for printing the article, and somebody else is making money, which is the publisher. So the whole process is very, very crooked. But anyway, we will not go into that. But by open access, when you will say that your journal is open access, it gets misinterpreted. So you should say that it is free for publishing. And there are many other issues related to peer review and authors, which we will come to. But I think after these comments, I would like to listen to the other panelists and take up any questions which are there, and then go on further.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Sir, we are having
one small comment I'll make, and I'll leave.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Sir, it is so nice listening to you. Coming to this open access, say for example, Journal of Psychosocial Health. What we have is actually called as gold open access.
Okay.
What it means is, it is free for publishing, free to access 24/7, anybody, anywhere in the world. So this, I'll tell you the advantages of this. When we use the open access with that particular criterion, lot of publishers try to collect the money. But if we are very clear about neither we are collecting money for any of the activities and this is accessible to everybody. See, for example, at the end of second year, that means second year plus, maybe we have already crossed about 6 or 7 years. We are already in DOAJ. We are already trying to go for indexing purposes actually. So open access is not a bad term, except that many people have spoiled it in the industry by charging. We are open access, we are trying to give, please contribute for this, and very exorbitant rates. In fact, some of the it is almost very big. I can tell you one of these publication recently, the amount of money quoted was something around 2 lakhs plus. So it has become one of the real big business that way. But open access is not actually bad at all. Open access is having different meanings, and people have tried to make use of that.
I fully agree, sir. But we should clarify that.
Yes,
we should clarify that.
You should make very clear, and we are not going to charge anything. And mainly open access is because it is accessible to everybody.
Yeah.
So for example, we did the Indian Journal of Psychiatry. We did what we basically call as it is totally free for Indians in India. It is chargeable for SAARC countries some extent, and outside SAARC circle charges. You know, at the end of 2 years when we reviewed, what we had collected was around 60,000, 70,000 rupees. Absolutely not worth. So better to keep it open access and try to be reachable to almost everybody, anybody who wants to have a look at it.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Chaturvedi, sir. We'll come back to you again with the questions and everything. So the next thing would be we'll invite Dr. Vina, and also I'll just mention that we are going to have a peer review training or peer review basics meeting on 21st of this month. So we are running few of these kind of sessions. So our editorial board members as well as members of IPS KC and IPS are are with the flow of the current events in terms of these methods, basically publishing or editing or reviewing, whatever. So the next people are ready when somebody wants to take over from me. Okay, Dr. Vina, madam. So what happens is after Dr. Vina has given her introduction and she has got a little small presentation, and after that we'll move on to the case scenarios. I got about 7 case scenarios. So we'll wait for Dr. Vina to complete her presentation, and then in the end we'll take the questions. Yeah, over to you, Dr. Vina.
Thank you,
ma'am. Yeah. Okay.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Clear.
Thank you very much. At the outset, I'd like to thank the IPS-KC Journal of Psychiatry Spectrum Committee for inviting me. And it's always been an enriching experience interacting with professionals, and I'm more enriched. And it's more of an interaction than anything new I'm bringing to the table. It just concretes some of our ideas. So it's more of a thought process that we are working this together. And I would like to bring in a bit of the end point of academic research, because most of the research is focused on publication. So that is how the publication, we have to look at it in continuation of how the research went through, because ultimately we would like a good publication with academic research completing, and we want to disseminate the knowledge, and we want the deliverables which are being utilized by others, and to make the publication count for promotion and incentives. And research integrity and publication ethics are used under one umbrella term, research and publication misconduct, if you are looking at it. And without scientific rigor and conforming to publication guidelines, that is scope guidelines, research and resulting publications can be questionable. So with that, I would like to think one of the most appreciative steps you've taken is to reinforce this ethics during the publication at the very outset. So this is a very cliche term, but why publish is because if it wasn't published, it wasn't done, it is said by many. So much of the academic research requires the publications to be there. And going by one of the most retracted papers, of course, it's Yoshida from Japan, but this Joachim Bolt is as much, whereas general anesthesiologist, 89 out of 110 articles were falsified. And 16 out of the world's most reputed anesthesiology and medical journals, there were public apologies and false articles. In February 2011, he was stripped of professorship. This is not to say that good, bad, or ugly, but a research misconduct reflects into a publication which unknowingly we might be encouraging. So just a kind of awareness. So I'm just bringing into focus what is the guidelines when we talk of publication ethics. So that means it takes into consideration how the research was conducted. So starting right with the approval and the consent. So if you are looking at a scientific article, you see whether there was a IRB approval. You ask for it. You question whether it was done or no. And whether it was, if it was a clinical trial, whether it was registered and is it documented informed consent. Now, as far as data accuracy and falsification and fabrication, one has to be careful because sometimes a PG thesis, when the PG leaves, gets published by the department, and then the PG comes back to claim, I was the author, I worked on it, but my name is missing. So many a times we need to look into that material, the raw data that was there, and whether this particular thing is manipulated. Now, plagiarism and self-plagiarism, according to me, do not have, as self-plagiarism is something that you go on quoting your own facts and figures, which of course it's the editor's property once you got it published, copyrighted. But at the same time, plagiarism is something including ideas that you've copied from somebody. Now, herein comes in a small problem because the reviewers also have to look out for their own biases and for their own way of they're doing a particular study, and whether this study, they would like to have their study published first. And then the submission fraud, of course, comes from the person who is submitting. Many a times the postgraduates as well as the early career people publish it, try to give it in 2-3 different journals, thinking whichever publishes first, then we'll retract from the other journals. But it so happened in the particular case that we were looking at that simultaneously in 2 different journals, the same article got published. And he had no time to retract because he wanted to wait for confirmation, because at least one publication was a must. Like in India, they say publish or perish. So, or polish or vanish and things like that. So that is a compulsion with which publication is having a force. But please do not misunderstand that every researcher does this. But it's just a caution that we need to have a fine balance. And then once we have a set track record that this person is trying to do it well. But I also am very impressed by what Dr. Chaturvedi said. It is not about a good boss or somebody, but how good is the paper. It's very important. We don't have an aura when we look at it. That's why the blinding. Because I started my career as assistant professor, and the very first year, I was made the editor-in-chief of Karnataka Medical Legal Society Journal. It was a hard task for me because those days when they wrote the handwritten articles and submitted, and it was for us to make it into a typed manuscript. And then especially the professor said 95% of the time they don't speak up. Then you ring and ask, sir, 95%, but there's no reference. Adella bit bitty, don't worry about it. You know, I'm more experienced, so you go ahead and publish. Then we had to say, sir, can we say, in your opinion, it is 95? It's just your guesstimate and not the accurate figure. It's not out of a study, because these are some things that you will have to develop an insight into as you are looking at an article for reviewing. So I'm very happy that you're also having a training session for that. And that is how the ethics of authorship, rightly pointed out by Dr. Rao, who gets credit, who gets to be acknowledged, who are really the authors. So that is how do you include, what is the agreement with authors, co-authors? Are the co-authors aware of even the contents of publication? I remember a time when I went to a person and congratulated him and I asked him that I wanted the methodology. He said, I don't know. I said, sir, you have authored it. Oh, our PGs always write our names, but I don't know. So this is what makes us think we need to relook. Are we taking authorship lightly? Are we looking at gifting authorship to all the people to appease? Is it a part of our Guru Dakshina? We think we can offer it lock, stock and barrel, and for the HOD and for anybody else who don't even know what we are doing the study about. And also conflicts of interest. And again, I'd like to say that, as you rightly pointed out, financial conflict of interest is most important. But besides, also a personal conflict that is related to you. If he's my husband, then I walk out of the ethics committee during that time, or I used to do that, or you don't vote, you don't get to vote about it, you don't get to hear about it. So there is also can be a professional conflict of interest, my own boss, and then it's something that I know it's not ethical, but I have to keep quiet because I'm in ethics committee, but what to say, because if I have to complicate the matter, it will get back to him. So these are something that we have to be careful. And this is exactly, so this is fabrication from removing from thin air. And it happened during the Bhopal times. In forensic, some of the publication that came out talking about histopathology due to the tragedy from a person who never even visited Bhopal during the gas tragedy. But then the paper became famous. So that is why you call it a kind of from thin air you publish. Duplicate and redundant publications are very many. Although if my PhD thesis is so big and nobody will publish it in one paper, I can make it into 2 or 3, but in each of them I should say that this is a part of PhD publication, first part of which is published, this is the second part and the third part, so that when systematic review is done, the data is not multiplied 3 times. And this is something that we have to look for, and translating into another language and submitting it for publication without citing that the original is in this language. And online, actually a lot of times, because of the online submission, a lot of this have been reduced. And salami publication and a tile publication where you series of papers with substantial overlapping content with just adding 10 more and then publishing, or a salami where you publish 2 or more papers from the same data sets without explicitly stating this. So generally, one has to employ a good plagiarism checker. And you have to set at what stage you are having a cutoff, 20%, 25%, or 15%, some go for 10%, and how the articles are treated. And like in UGC, it approves Urkund, but then you can go for any of them that you feel it's your belief on. And software reports percentage of words, phrases copied, etc. And the manuscripts rejected, especially in ICMJ guidelines, it's put on the author's list, that you have which are rejected manuscripts. So unless there is a substantial revision, we should not submit it to another. And so if you go on publishing the rejected one without revision, then you'll be a journal that they're not paying much attention to it. And so try to see that they don't get rid, because they may go for retraction much later when somebody points out. So this is one of the UGC initiative. ICMR also has put out the note, which is quite similar to this initiative, which is by the COPE, that what guidelines to be followed for publication. So this is my short presentation. Thank you very much. I look out for the panel discussion.
Thank you, madam. If you unshare the screen, then thank you, ma'am. Thank you. One second. We can now go for case scenario discussion. Okay. So for audience, can I request you to please type in chat box for any questions. We'll try and unmute and ask you to speak if time permits. So please do as and when we have any questions. So it will be easier for me to pick up from those questions to make it interesting. Okay, so that's ethics of publication. So the first scenario. My story of trials and tribulations of my life. I'm Ranjini. I joined this teaching hospital 6 years back. I have one publication and I need one more to get promoted as associate professor, a nice hike in pay. I have 3 children, my in-laws and my husband in my family. My husband also works in the same hospital in another department and requires one more publication. And since this hospital is new, we do not have much venue for research. This year, a brilliant fresh PG joined our department and she had research data with her brought from somewhere else. So I have been very friendly and I'm sure I can convince her to include me and my husband as co-authors, as we all can get benefited. According to me, this is a good example of practical utilization of resource, because with one paper, 3 can get benefited and 1 gets recognition and 2 get promotion and 2 become associate professors. So I can have my own students to guide and multiply my publication. So discuss ethical issues here related to publication and how should the journal editors should go about it. So first we go with our panelists. Madam, you want to go first?
Yeah. There comes a situation where a person doesn't set out to be fraudulent, but sometimes the circumstances make it imperative that you have to take a jump this way or that. So the testing times are that how is ethics followed when nobody is watching you? It's nice to say, okay, I'm good when I'm on the stage, but then I say be kind to everybody, but when I open the door, then somebody comes to ask me something and I very rudely treat them. So this is ethics in action. And I would say that would you refrain from it, or would you be falling a prey to it? And many, I mean, would anybody like to put in chat? They would go along with Ranjini, or they would resist the temptation.
Yeah. For editors, what is your suggestion for editors? How
That is
how do
why we have to ask them, what is the contribution to be author? Because they have to fill in the criteria. What was done? Who did the planning? Who did the data collection? Because unless you know the quantum of work done by everyone, I know a case study where there were 6 authors on that. And when I started asking what was the contribution of each, they said we are allowed to have 6 authors for a case study. So that is not an answer enough to why 6 authors are doing one case study, which is just some OPD, and it's their own case that they came in. But then A to Z, whoever is in the department gets listed. So I think if we start asking a bit of tough questions, then it boils down to who did the collection, who did the writing, who did the clearance, and that's it. So I think that is how we need to,
We do have ICMJE guidelines about authorship, on authorship. So we have 4 criteria. They need to tick all the 4 choices, or 4 boxes to be ticked. I think we'll be able to ask them. Dr. Chaturvedi sir, you have any comments on this particular thing?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think this is an example of guest authorship, which Dr. Vaswani had mentioned. So it can become guest authorship. Now, let's look at the practical side of it. Okay. See, imagine now there will become 2 more associate professors, and there will be there is already a shortage in the country, and somebody else will get. So that's on the funny side. But this thing happens. Okay. And how do we overcome it? Okay. So how do we overcome guest authorship? Now, I mean, a lot of people in the audience, some of them have been my students, and many of them have known me. I have retired, and I know in my 40 years, I used to get many such requests. Okay, it is not requests from husband and wife. Yeah, but there are. I think I have a couple of husband and wife authors with me. So they would come and say, let's accept this. Not everybody is a writer. Okay, I am a writer. I am more writer than a doctor. I'm an author. I am a writer, and for me, writing is not a problem. I can do it very easily. But it is not there for everyone. I have seen best of people who are very good psychiatrists, very good MD students, very good faculty, and they can't write even a paragraph. So it's a question of skill, and it's a, what shall I say? It is something which is inherent, which is there. So we used to have people would come and say that I want to write a paper. I have never written. Even now I get. I mean, I have been here in UK the last 3 months, and I have already 2 or 3 people who have approached me that they would like to write. So there it is mentoring, but like this, that people want to have this thing. So how to overcome guest editorship, guest authorship is, I would tell them that you contribute same way as even when the ICMJE guidelines were not popular, I would say you contribute. So you do this much of review of literature, and you write this part, or you do the analysis, or you do something or the other. So you do your contribution, so that you are able to sleep well, that you haven't done a fraud, and I am able to sleep well, that I have not done anything unethical. And that was not a problem. There were people who were ready to do, and they did. And in my career, I have probably more than 300, 400 co-authors with me, out of which many who came just to be mentored, many came to learn, many participated, but nobody got without a contribution. So I'm very surprised that Dr. Vaswani even gave an example that a student goes out and comes back and finds that the faculty has published the paper. It is totally unethical. So it is not done. Any research done by a student is that student's research.
Absolutely.
Whether they publish
Absolutely,
or
sir.
not, it cannot be taken. Even if somebody else writes it, the student has to be the first author. So that is there. But also we should see, if you look up, PubMed or something, there are articles in which there are 20 authors, 50 authors, 100 authors, especially these international studies. There can be hundreds of authors. And in one of the some articles, they are large group studies. I found that the number of authors went into 2 pages of the PubMed. But coming to the case studies which Dr. Vaswani mentioned, for example, case reports. Now we have had case reports from NIMHANS and from my unit and department where we had everyone. So that is because everyone was involved. So we have all the 2 or 3 consultants, the senior resident, the junior resident, the psychologist, the social worker. So there can be. So it depends on what involvement is there, because it is very difficult not to include someone who has taken care of the patient, or has. But it is not only care of the patient, but if you are taking information about that care, it is very important. So what should the editor do? Editor does not have much role other than you mentioned that according to the ICMJE, you should say what has been the contribution of each and every author. So you can say the first author conceptualized the idea. Now, last 10-15 years of my career, maybe 20 years, I had only ideas. I can only conceptualize the idea. I cannot sit down and write everything. So I will give ideas. So as an idea person, I will get this thing. Somebody else will write. I will correct it. So who is written will get this thing. So as editor, we should make sure that it is done. As an editor, suppose you come to know that somebody's name has been put just because they are head of the department or head of the institute, then it is a tricky problem. Then you have to stand up, have a spine, and question it. And you can't question it openly. So the way to question would be the same. I think you should also take any opinion from any of the participants, if they have any, because they are all, I can see many of them are very, very experienced, and many of them have got.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So in relation to this, anybody has any comments, or we'll come back, sir. We'll come back.
Okay,
We can in the end.
problem.
So we got few, so we can go ahead. With regard to manuscript writing, sir, the IPSKC has plans to conduct a workshop to mentor and IPSKC, because IPSKC has got some role towards the members to help them to publish also. So that cannot be done from the journal perspective, but that can be done from IPSKC. They'll do it separately, and they'll conduct manuscript writing workshop. That's coming up next month.
Vijay,
Yes, sir, yes, sir.
I would like to inculcate the patriotism for Karnataka. See, the research done in Karnataka by Karnataka IPS should be showcased. So you should encourage people to write. You should, help them to write. And we should be able to share the findings of studies done in Karnataka as well as in the Indian background, because what is happening is most of the literature is from the West, because there are so many people who are able to do, and even if you see, suppose for MD thesis, as even my own students, I have seen, out of, if suppose I've had 50 students who did a thesis under me, in the end there were only 5 or 6 who wrote papers. Almost 80-90% of theses are never published as paper. Such a waste. It is unethical that you do a thesis and you don't publish it. So you keep the literature to yourself. Somebody else says this has never been studied, and they do all over again. So we should encourage, and the workshop that you do, you should encourage people to write and help, and so that the world knows that there are studies being done in India and Karnataka.
So there's a question in the chat box. Who should be the corresponding author for PG research projects? MCA guidelines for promotion was that faculty should be the first author or corresponding author for promotion.
No.
So
the MCA guideline. No, MCA guideline is that it should be either first author, second author, or corresponding author. Okay. Now, corresponding author is the one who is like a postman. That's all. So because a faculty has got a permanent address. So so then it can come to this. So after MD, somebody will go as a senior resident in some other state. After that, they will go to Australia or to UK or somewhere else. So their address will change, because corresponding address remains, and in future for their life, people would see that article and do that. So, but it is up to all. See, one thing I can say, most relationships and friendships are broken because of authorship. So you should have the authorship clear right in the beginning. I've seen very close friendships breaking because of authorships. I wanted to be first author, second author, and all. So when you do a research, you say, this is being done. I will be the first author. You will be the second author. Sometimes then there are many, then we have alphabetically, or we say, okay, according to, whatever I think. If somebody does this part, at later stage in life, like for example, my last 20-30 years, I always wanted to be the last author, because I know that anybody who will see that list of authors, they will know that SKC has done the mentoring. So I am the last author, and I will never want to be a first author or second author, but corresponding author is who will be the postman, and otherwise first author, corresponding author need not be first author. Corresponding author can be second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, last. Anybody can be corresponding author. The MCI NMC guideline is very short-sighted. They don't understand.
Yeah, I know.
It's because of frauds. So that's why they say one should be first author, second author, or corresponding author. But that is not important.
Now it's 3, sir. Now it's 3 or corresponding author. So we got 4 possibilities now. 4 people can have their names recognized. Right, sir. Let's move on to the second case scenario. The case 2, consultant XY has worked with Dr. PQ before for some time in a same project. XY is not working anymore. XY is asked by the journal to review a work that XY could guess that it is from PQ in the same lab. It has come from the same lab. Hardly few experts in that field, so the reviewer can guess who the authors are, and editor may also be aware of this. How to go about ensuring policy of double blind in such situation? From reviewer's perspective and editor's perspective. Sir, you want to take?
Yeah, I'll take. See, when you will do your workshop for peer reviewing, I think, Vijay, you must tell the reviewers not to even guess who the author is. Like I said, go by the quality of the paper, not the quality of the person. So if they go by quality of the paper, they will not try to guess whose it is and whose it is not. That is what is not important. What is important is what is written, and so that it can be double blind. So double blind is not necessary. I know in many journals I am single blind reviewer, and in some journals take open review. So that's not each has got its own merits and demerits. So what should be done is, when you ask people to submit, what we do in the Journal of Psychosocial Rehab is, we ask them to give 2 or 3 suggestions. Okay, so we take one of their suggestions, and then one reviewer is decided by us. And then what are some of the ethical things which we try to maintain is, any paper submitted from NIMHANS is not reviewed in NIMHANS. So that otherwise we will come to know, oh yeah, I know so-and-so is doing this study. So any paper submitted by an author in NIMHANS is sent out of NIMHANS to any other reviewer, even international, and anybody whose paper comes from outside. We try to see that it is done by one of the NIMHANS team or one of the people within India to review it. So we make sure that it is done. But then I'll tell you, some people do. I will talk about a little fraud which has come up with this reviewing process, and that is that people, 1 or 2 papers, they gave names of people, and I should give the credit to Dr. Shiv Kumar who looked up, and nowadays it's very easy to Google, and you can even do the Google image and see what that person looks like. So we did Google and found that this person had nothing to do with mental health. He was a businessman or something like that, and his name was given as reviewer. So he came and told me. Then I said, no. So we will ask for a scientific, peer review. So what people have started doing is, that is another fraud which I have come to know in the last 1 year or 2 years. They create another, what shall I say, another reviewer who actually
Identity.
doesn't exist, who doesn't exist only. See, nowadays you can very easily make an email. So they make create a person, create another email, put that person's name as a reviewer. That article comes to them, and they themselves are reviewing their own paper with a different name. So when people are using technology for that. So this has not happened with my journal, but I know some editors of other journals have brought this to. So now they are checking at IP address. That is how they caught. They look at IP address and they find the IP address of the author and IP address of the reviewer is the same. So if there is technology to do fraud, there is technology to catch fraud also. So one should be very, very cautious. Editor, that's why I said you should find suitable reviewers. Means don't go for experts. Don't really go for experts. Because it is basically about review. Go for people who have done little work. That is also fine. You don't need. This is not a MD exam or a DM exam that you need experts. In that. Even there, one should not have. But try to have reviewers who can review any paper.
Yeah, and it also means it's not about the quality of the research. Also, it is all about quality of what is written, what is in the manuscript.
Yes, yes.
Okay, right, ma'am. You have any comments for this case? And you need to unmute.
I totally agree with what Professor said, because it's not the person or our relations with them, but what is in the paper. Because many a time there, if you can find a flaw which requires to be exposed, or it needs to be bridged with the data that they have, or it's wrongly written, then the communication starts. At the same time, there are some journals also are in the habit of asking a person to suggest reviewers, which Sir pointed out, and even I do not like that, because there comes in the conflict of interest. Then I show somebody who's very nice to me, I give their names, and then I hope that they will be able to give a good review. So, but then again, the quality of review suffers because the neutrality of science is lost. So I totally endorse with Dr. Chaturvedi said. Yeah, thank you.
So SKC sir, when we ask the authors, they also give at least 2 reviewers details. I think my understanding is that will go to the database rather than we choose them.
Yeah.
Is that fair to say? Yeah. Okay.
No, it goes to the database, yes, but because sometimes people will say that you are choosing reviewers who are rejecting our papers. So some journals have that. Okay, you can also suggest.
Yes.
So, but in the end, you will take everyone's reviews and then make a decision, isn't it? So, if somebody has given a very favorable one, but your reviewer says it is not good, then you drop that reviewer also and you get another review.
Okay. So is it okay to generally do that, sir? What are the names that they have given? Yeah.
No. See, it is to keep them happy. But I agree with Dr. Vaswani that that it brings in a conflict of interest. But it is all right. So they should not blame you that that you have chosen reviewers who will reject. See, after some time, you come to know there are many types of reviewers. There are some reviewers who are very strict, but they need not be so strict. They are so strict they reject everything. And there are many reviewers who don't read, and they will just accept everything. I remember one of the reviewers when we were doing Indian Journal of Psychiatry, and we sent one paper to one of the heads of departments. I don't want to name the person, and kept on sending papers to him, and he would not send the review. So review became late by 3 months, 4 months, 6 months. Then one day we called him up and asked him. So he said, okay, what you do, the first paper you accept, second paper you reject, and third paper you ask to revise. So we could make out that he is not interested, he doesn't want to do, and he has not done it. It is very unfair to the author. So that's why when you put in the editorial board members big shots, but be careful if you want to have time management, you want to have prompt reviews. Prompt reviews will be done only by people who do prompt reviews, and those who have time, and which would be people who are mid-level. It is good for them. They will learn more. They will their research capabilities will increase, and it will be very, very helpful. So be very cautious. Yeah.
Okay. Right. We'll move on to the next one, sir.
Yeah.
author complains to the editor that alleging that the reviewer might have used some of the ideas, materials from their peer review work. It is likely that the reviewers using info or material from the peer review work. So what is the role of editor? What is the ethical issue? What are the regulations governing the reviewers conduct? Ma'am, you want to take this?
Yeah, the authors make a complaint, but the question is, you can always ask for a raw data, ethical clearance. What is the periodicity? Which was the first research that was being done? And then if it had come near completion and then came for review, whereas the other one started it much later or it was predated, it's something that can be solved by looking to some extent at the raw data, but also at the same time, if they're working on a similar areas, it may be difficult to find out copied whom, because it's possible that they had a similar ideas. It's also possible that it's like a mental health during COVID in high schools. Now there's so many people are doing such a research. So then if I have reviewed a paper on that, and if at the same time I'm also having such a research, it may be falsely alleged that I'm doing copying of their ideas, but in reality, it may be a very common topic as well. So unless you think that the data has been lifted, then it's not of a concern. Sir, what do you say, Sir Dr. Chaturvedi?
No, you're absolutely right, madam. The author is paranoid, so author is suspicious that the reviewer is lifting material, but it is not that, because like you're saying, unless one takes data and all, but then it will come under plagiarism, So if you take some ideas, you can quote that the citation should be there, the reference should be there. So that is mainly ethical. But otherwise, that is the whole purpose of reviewing. You learn something, you should get ideas. And if reviewing can give you more ideas, that is very good. In any case, when the reviewer is reviewing, by the time the author has already finished the study, the reviewer will do it. It will take another 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years down the line. So there's nothing wrong with that. But I have seen many editors write, and we also write, that please be very cautious that you do not infringe on the person's ideas and do not lift it without acknowledgement. If they take it and with acknowledgement, fine. I mean, I can tell you 2 or 3 things which I have learned by reviewing papers, and I have got good ideas from them, and I have molded them in my own, and then did a study on my own. It was something which I had never thought of. That's so interesting. So if there was no benefit, even educational benefit, I'm looking at educational benefit. That is the whole purpose. We are learning to with each other. We are teaching each other. So today, so many people will take ideas from us. From the panelists.
So in summary, the lifting the data or lifting, some work directly as to learning from it and getting more ideas is different.
They are different.
There are 2 more questions which are similar to this, so we'll move on. Reviewers wanting authorship. One of the peer reviews connecting with the authors because he was able to guess who it is, and then offering help to improve the paper to an international standard, but seeking authorship. So any ethical issue here, sir? You want to take that?
Yeah, sorry, just can you read?
One of the peer reviewers.
This is totally unethical. The reviewer should not contact the author, and author should not contact the reviewer. So authors contact reviewers when, as madam said, when they have suggested a reviewer, then they will tell, hey, my paper is going to come. So they will contact the reviewer. But ideally, it should not be done. It is totally unethical that a reviewer should contact the author. They should not do it. If there is anything they can give, how to revise the paper, and they give comments like in my first few international papers, I used to get reviews which were typewritten and sent to me. The review comments were bulkier than my paper. So, and they would give each and every line, each and every word, but nobody ever asked for sharing. Once or twice I felt that at least in acknowledgement can I write, because I don't know who the reviewer is. In the acknowledgement, can I write that I would like to thank the reviewer for giving these ideas and modifying my paper. Some editors agreed, many editors didn't agree. They said, no, that is a part and parcel of the whole process, so we don't want to get into it. So no, this is totally wrong. It should not be done. If you find any such reviewer, you should blacklist them. Blacklist a reviewer who connects with authors and asks for authorship.
You're supposed to be blind, and this is blinding is broken, so which means they are not allowed to become do the review. Okay.
This is something like contract writing as well, because
yeah.
then you say like, as a contract basis, I will write it. So instead of money, you are using your position to get the article and your authorship. So this is not ethical.
Okay, so this is another related one. Author complains that his article was rejected, but surprised to see that similar one gets published in the following issue. So again, I think this author has doubt whether the editor have deliberately helped the other person, maybe in the editorial team or whoever or he knows, and reviewers are actually delaying the review work. Madam, you were mentioning this. Reviewers are actually delaying the review work, ensures his his presentation get through elsewhere, which was on similar work, and he wants to claim that he was the first one in that area.
I think as author or as a reviewer, most important thing for anybody is integrity, because that is what we owe to the science. That's what we owe to ethics. So without integrity, if you're working, a lot of these suspicions, even if they're cast in our direction, then it becomes difficult for future anybody to rely on us as a good reviewer or an author. So if there are such a things, then it should be sensitively told that there is such a allegation about it. So how do you like to respond? Then if you have a basis for why this allegation was made, because I'm also aware of one such thing where somebody had directly complained that I have written an article, but it's been delayed for 8 or 9 months. Review hasn't come through, but similar article got published. And including the ideas, including the objectives and so on, whether they fast-tracked with the data, whether they'd already collected data, but they were not given ethical clearance or whatever is not known, but it does happen, but not very commonly. But I think one has to look out for it. And we must, I think you can take the bull by the horns, that these are the allegations. How would you like to respond?
So,
yeah, no, it happens. It has actually happened with me also. So, in early, see, this is a cutthroat world. When like in vaccines, everybody saying we have brought out a vaccine first, we brought out a pill first, we brought out this first and that first. So it happens. One has to take it. I remember very early, and it is there now because it is printed. I did something on emergency psychiatry referrals and sent it to IJP, and it was delayed. And then it was printed in the next issue. The issue before that had an article on emergency psychiatry referrals from the editor's department. So it happens all the time. What is the editor's role? Editor's role is to see, that is why they give time limit. Please send the review in 2 weeks time or 4 weeks time. If a reviewer is delaying, you drop that, you take another reviewer. So nowadays with technology and with email and online reviewing, all these things are possible. Automatically a person gets uninvited. Automatically, if there is a delay, so there are in technology itself, there is method how you can overcome it. It will not happen.
Okay, sir, one more. This may have happened recently. Can editors and reviewers decide to do an audit of their work by looking at the fate of all the rejections? What has happened to the manuscripts that particular journal has rejected? For example, it's Journal of Psychiatry Spectrum. I decide to do a audit after 1 year to see what has happened to those articles that has been rejected by me or my team. Can it be done, or is there anything?
No, of course it should. It should be done. It could be done, and there is no reason why you should not do it. You should understand, because see,
can this be published? Can this be published?
Of course,
in the same journal.
Yeah, in any journal. In any journal, you can publish. See, I'll give you an example. There was a paper which was rejected by 2 local journals, one in NIMHANS journal, one in Indian journal, my own paper, and that was like a blessing in disguise. I sent it to an international journal. It got published there. Not only it got published there, it got a Pune Psychiatric Association Award of our IPS. So, I'm not of the suspicious type, so I'm not suspecting that something was there. But then these things happen. It is all depends on which reviewer it has gone to. And that reviewer did not like it. That is fine. Those days there used to be only one reviewer. But this is very important to see what is happening and is there any flaw in our system. And audits are to actually improve standards. So to improve standards of your journal, it's a very good thing. You should do it.
So audits are better, not actual as research. You can't do as
audits
research.
would not
audit-
require a
okay.
clearance.
Yeah.
Or because it's like a surveillance and epidemiological study. If you're doing an epidemiological study, you need an ethical clearance. If you're doing a surveillance, it's not required. So the same finesse with which you work, if you're doing an audit, that's a go ahead and audit.
It can be mentioned as audit and go ahead, sir.
Why not? Why not?
Yeah.
See, if you see when Dr. Rao took up the IJP, just around that time, we published an article with Dr. Somashekar, who is here in UK. B.S. Somashekar. We looked at in how many articles in the IJP ethical clearance is written or not written. And we found, we did a longitudinal sort of a thing. And before 2002 or 3, less than 10% articles would mention that this has received ethical clearance, but that went on increasing. And by 2005, 6, 7, it became almost like 50-60%. And now if you will do it, you will find almost more than 90% of the articles have a ethical clearance mention.
Right. Sir, there are few questions in the chat box. We can, try and answer, and we let them speak also. Dr. Rangnath, can you unmute and say what you want to say, because it's quite a long one. So you get an opportunity to interact with, eminent panelists.
Good evening,
Dr.
sir.
Rangnath, please.
Good evening, madam. In case of PhD works or large studies done by the PGs, where the material is so vast that it cannot fit into one standard original article word length, say around 3,500 to 4,000 word length, or even if the author, even if the editor permits, say around another 500 words, it may not fit into one single article. So what are the requisites if salami publication is thought of, when that salami publication is considered as ethically acceptable? Author acknowledges that through cross-referencing that is the original work, and this is the part of that particular large study.
That's all it needs to be done. You have to acknowledge the fact that this is one part of the other papers. If they're already published, you can write the second or third part has already been published. If the first part is published somewhere, this is the second part. So that is it. Then there's one more part, because unless you try to say that your PhD has been broken into 3, those who are doing a systematic review on some parts of it will not be counting it as 3 different things. So it's important to mention that. But in salami publication, what happens is many a times it's the same data. It is reflected, but with a different tenor, the text, and a kind of making it look like giving it a new appearance. Like an old frock with a kind of jallar somewhere, a frill somewhere, and a bow somewhere. So the question is, there's only one frock. But then you're trying to make it look like there are many of them. So in what way it misleads is when you're doing a review or a systematic review or acknowledging, then it can even sidetrack, or it can take the science in a different direction. It happens with a cure for a particular treatment on a clinical trials. Let us say there are other publications using a drug, but there's a same paper which is published in 5 different or 3 different journals. The 200 patients here get multiplied into 600 in the database. So that is why then if there is some treatment formulation which is common for everybody, this can be misleading. So in order to maintain that authenticity, it is important for us to declare that there's only one work as a PhD thesis. It is being split into, and this objective is discussed in this. This will be discussed as a separate paper.
It has to be put in the introduction part, or madam, materials and methods part?
It can be a part of the material methods.
Yeah. Subsidiary question is, say author plans to do a comparative study he has got an ethical clearance to do a comparative study and say two illnesses, hypertension and diabetes. And he publishes 3 articles of that. Say hypertension separate, he publishes as a 1 article. Diabetes he publishes as a 2nd article, comparing hypertension and diabetes, which is for what he got the ethical clearance in actual, he publishes as the 3rd article. I think there are some ethical issues in this. What's your say, madam?
Actually, if the objective because it's always measured up with the objective of your research. If the objective was comparison, then why only a diabetes got published? It's only the comparison that needs to get published.
Yes. So ethical issues do arise.
That is a salami publication if you split
yes,
it like
this
that.
is actually a salami publication. So any standards are there, madam, where, guidelines where salami publication can be considered as ethical one? Apart from mentioning the cross-referencing.
I'm not aware of it actually, I should say, but I'm not aware because I know it's rampant. But at the same time, if Dr. Chaturvedi can throw some light on it, because
well, I'll give a more, I think, a specific idea about what is salami. Salami is basically, I'm a vegetarian, so I really don't know, but I think it is a very thin slice. Okay, so for example, if you do a study on, let's say, this same example you give, comparative study of diabetes and hypertension, and because if they both are common disorders, if there is a large group of information come out with diabetes, it can be a separate publication. Hypertension can be a separate publication. Of course, a comparison can be a separate publication. Salami would be if you say that in the diabetes paper that you say diabetes in women, diabetes in men, diabetes in rural area, diabetes in urban area. If you take each and every socio-demographic variable and make one paper out of it, that is salami. Okay, and but it is not ethical, of course, and it should be, even if you mention that in the methodology part, one should say that the detailed methodology is given in so and so paper or in so and so thing. But actually, one should avoid doing. When I've seen papers like these, where people have taken each and every socio-demographic thing. So in Hindus, in Hindu men, in Muslim men, Hindu women, in Muslim women, Hindu men from village, Muslim men. So you take each and that is salami. But if for PhD question, I will tell you. For example, nowadays the UGC guideline is you should have at least 1 or 2 papers from the thesis before it can be accepted. Okay, so you have to have, and how can you publish a 500-600 page thesis into a 4,500 words or 4,000, 5,000 words? So where people encourage that you should have at least 3 or 4 or 5 papers. That is not salami. Salami is thin sheet, very thin slice. So people do one on review of literature, they do one on methodology and discussing the methodology. Then they do 1 or 2 papers on the final results, or if anything exciting has come out. So any thesis can have multiple papers. Salami is very, very thin, irrational slices of the research.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, madam.
Thank you, Dr. Nath. Can we move on to next, Mr. Nasil NG? You want to ask Nasil and Nasilian? You want to unmute and ask, please? Yeah, please. Hello, we can't hear you.
Am I audible, sir?
Yeah. Yeah,
yes.
madam, please.
Yes, my question was, suppose if in a research, 3 persons were involved, like the student, the guide, and the co-guide. And now when it comes to publication, it was given to another person itself who was not at all a part in the research. And he had done the publication. So can that person's name be involved in the authorship as a fourth author? Is that an ethical practice or an unethical practice?
Yeah.
That's my question, sir. Yeah.
It depends on what you call got it published. Is it preparing the manuscript, using the correct language, intonation, the diagrams, tables, arranging? Because even preparation of manuscript is quite tedious. To make it presentable, to make it publishable, to see that errors are removed. So if the person has done that, but all of it should begin during the beginning of the study. As far as possible, try not to have a bandwagon in the end. But instead, while planning of the study, who's doing the publication, who's doing the part of manuscript preparation, who is in the data collection, who's doing the analysis. If it is planned, then that won't be a problem.
Yeah, there is ICMJE guidelines. I can share if you if you're able to connect me to or connect to me or somebody. We have this ICMJE guidelines which says these are conception, then critical review of the paper, and then you should actually own the authorship. You can't just say I'm not responsible. You should say responsible, and you should know the whole content. So you need to tick all the 4 boxes. And according to that, it is okay to, it's not unethical, but again, that can be mentioned, that what are the contributions of each of the authors, I think.
So there is something called as ghost writers. Okay. So either you give the person authorship or you pay them. Ghost authors are people who get paid. So, and you will find advertisement for that. And even in your emails, you will get, requests that if you have any data or materials, give it to us. We will put it in the form of a paper and a thesis or whatever it is and give it to you. And we charge, $2,000 or $1,000 or $5,000, and we will do it for you. So, and there are people whose job is this, to write. So either you can do that, or you can, if they are scientific people, if they are in the same field, and as Madam was saying, if they have done academic work in it, then they can be involved as an author. But they can't be first author.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Anyone else?
Hello,
Anyone
sir.
else want to?
Dr. Harbishettar, Dr. Harbishettar, can you permit me to leave? Because I
Dr.
have...
Vina Vaswani, let's all thank Dr. Vina Vaswani for enlightening us with her knowledge. Ma'am, we will connect you through Dr. Anil Kakunje.
Sure.
So
Thank you.
we now know where you are. So it's our pleasure. So I don't think you're very far. So we will connect you through our colleague.
Sure, sir. I heartily thank you for
your
inviting me, and I got enriched by exchange of ideas. Thank you, Dr. Chaturvedi, sir. Thank you, Dr. Harbishettar, and also Anil Kakunji, sir. Thank you once again. Because I have a very older generation staying with me, so I need to cook up. I'm getting very late. So that is why. Otherwise, I'd love to stay with. Okay, thank you.
Sure, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. We won't take any longer. So probably 2 more questions and we'll wind up. Dr. Swarna Buddha, you want to ask? Dr. Swarna Buddha, can you hear me? Dr. Swarna? In the meantime, anyone else want to have?
Hello.
Dr. Anil, Dr. Swarna Buddha, yes, please.
Sir, thank you for bringing up the ghost author topic. Is the onus on the editorial team to find out if there is ghost authorship, or if one of the person is the statistician?
No, not at all, not at all. I mean, you can always use the skills of somebody else. People get, because not everybody is good in statistics, and you might like to take somebody else's statistical help. I have taken statistical help for papers. Some of them I have paid for statistical analysis they have done, for data entry and other things. So that's a part and parcel. Usually there is funds for that. And some are academic statisticians. They don't want money. They would prefer to be either put in acknowledgement or as a co-author if there is a lot of statistics done. So it's a part of that. Like I'm saying, ghost writership is a profession. So it's not so much to do with the editorial. So there is a main thing is even this journal, journal is in English, so, and whether you are in Karnataka or in India, English is not our first language. So we always have problems. So what I have started doing is, now in my books at least, I write that this book is written in Indian English. So people should not go and see that it is a British grammar and American grammar and all that. So in Indian English means Indian English, it's there. You will understand what I have written. So one has to be very cautious. Many of my papers, even now, after hundreds of publications, I get a comment that please correct your grammar, please check your language. So what to do about it? So the ghost writers, what they do is they do a very perfect job, use very good English, grammatically correct, thematically correct, language is very, very appropriate, and then they charge for it.
Okay. So we are running out of time, but we have few people in the in the audience. So we want to please kindly have some say in this. Dr. Geeta Desai, please, you want to say anything?
I mean, I think I've just kind of was wondering, there are now services for proof editing, copy editing. In fact, one of the patient actually has started as a rehab activity. So let's say if this person does for a paper, can we put, I mean, of course he gets paid. Is it important for them to come under acknowledgement?
Well, it's up to you. I mean, if they want to be acknowledged by money, then that is fine. If they want to be returned, then you can, that is even, being transparency. You can say that so-and-so person has actually done the proofreading and proof editing. In my early papers, when there was a manual typewriter, I know some of my papers I have written that this was typed by Mr. Krishnamurti or by Mr. James, and we used to do that. So there's nothing wrong. So if they like that, it would be, especially if a person is undergoing rehabilitation, it will be very encouraging for them to see that their name is there in in print, and it will always be there. So we can put as acknowledgement. Yeah, definitely.
Thanks, Dr. Geeta. Dr. Chandrasekhar sir, H. Chandrasekhar sir, please. Dr. H. Chandrasekhar is now retired. I don't know whether you're aware, sir. He was the HOD of the Bangalore Medical College, Department of Psychiatry at Bangalore Medical College, and one of the top person in state mental health authorities. Sir, yes, sir, please, sir.
Yeah, thank you. I enjoyed it. I always think it is a very nice, I think, discussion we had. Of course, all our PG should attend. That's all. I don't have many comments on this.
Sure, sir. Thank you, sir. Anyone else, please? We are running out of time. That's the reason I'm rushing through. Dr. Kiran, Dr. Anilka Kunje.
Good evening, everyone. It's really a wonderful discussion.
Okay.
And especially Dr. SKC's was my teacher. His practical experience was something nice to hear. And we need his guidance all through. Thank you.
Thank you, Anil. Thank you.
So I know where he is. Dr. Jagdish Tirthalli, sir, helped me to contact him. Yes, Dr. Kiran sir, President. Okay, we'll move on to sir, SKC sir, any final comments?
Sir, one question.
Dr. Rangnath, yes, one question, yes, please. Yeah. Dr. Rangnath, one last question, yes.
The difference between duplicate publication, salami publication, and self-plagiarism.
Okay. Duplicate publication is if you publish the same paper, the data and everything, totally in two journals, in two different journals. Salami is, like I said, it is small parts of the particular research or a work which is done in multiple slices that you do. Self-plagiarism is, if you copy the same part, not fully, but and put it there, and if you don't quote it, You know, if you cite it, then it is all right. You have already given a reference, because once you have published an article, it belongs to the publisher. It doesn't belong to you at all. So if you are quoting, you quote another place from your journal, and if you don't do that, and then it is a plagiarism. Plagiarism is writing something without giving a due acknowledgement or citation or a reference. If you give a reference, it is not a plagiarism. Plagiarism is totally avoidable. Why do you want to take what somebody else has written? Why do you want to take the blame for that? You say, I am not saying it, so and so has said it. So you can always do that. Yeah.
Sir, I think we should go for final comments from you, and then over to Dr. Som Bijal after that for for closing remarks.
I'm really happy that so many important steps are taken. Make it an enjoyable experience, Vijay and Somashekar and the full Karnataka IPS team. Don't become like a judge or like a police inspector and everyone else who is a criminal. Encourage people to write. There is very little return from our country. We need this, and don't bother about indexing. Okay, we do lots of things for indexing to get into PubMed. I feel very pained when our journal, the Journal of Psychosocial Rehab, they said that you have to have a rejection rate of 75%. I don't want to reject papers which are being done on rehab. I said so little is done on rehab. I want everyone to share it. So that is delaying our getting into the PubMed. But I said it doesn't matter, because nowadays the first thing which happens is the moment your paper is published or anything, it goes into Google. And where do people go? People go first to Google. I haven't seen PubMed in the last 3 months, 6 months. We don't see PubMed. We go to Google. You want to find something, go to Google. And anything which is published within the next day, as soon as your proof is done, it will be in Google. So enjoy writing, and Google Scholar. It goes to Google Scholar, so you can get a Google Scholar index. You can get it goes to ResearchGate. So all these things you should encourage. So people go more to ResearchGate, more to Google Scholar, more to Google, more to Yahoo, Bing, many other search engines. You should always remember PubMed is an American agency. It is by the National Library of Medicine of USA. Instead of that, you go to the Indian Medlar. There is an Indian Medlar. We should make it popular. We should make sure that things are people should know about it. You should put it in Twitter, put it in LinkedIn, put your papers there so that people come to know.
Things can Google Scholar internet there. No need to publish.
Sir.
Thank you.
Vijay sir, one final comments.
Yeah.
Vijay sir, one final
so it was a fantastic session what we had in the initial days of the launching of the new journal. So on behalf of Indian Psychiatric Society, I would like to thank my teacher, Dr. S.K. Chaturvedi sir, for giving his valuable inputs and comments. Thank you, sir. And also on behalf of Indian Psychiatry, I thank you for accepting our honor, what we have sent you, as you are not available in India, sir. Yes, and I'd like to request you to be with our team in making this journal. It was a long dream I had when I took over, when I joined the IPSKC around 10 years back. So everybody, whenever I sent my paper, it used to get rejected. As you told, it was a patriotism or whatever. I took it as a challenge to have our own journal. So it has come true now. Thank you, sir. So I request you to be with us always. And I also thank Dr. Vina Vaswani for giving us good comments and suggestions for all our young team. Thank you very much, madam. And I also thank our president, Dr. Kiran Kumar, and also our editor, Dr. Vijay Harbishettar, who moderated the session. And I also thank all the participants who actively participated in this program. So many more such programs will be appearing. I request everyone to be with us and give their suggestions. Thank you one and all, and good night. Good night to all.
Yeah. Thank you, Nawaz. We can, in fact, close it now. Mr. Nawaz, you're there?
Thank you, sir.
You can close. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we can stop recording also. Yeah. This will be made available in YouTube if anyone has missed. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.